We all know about LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, James Harden, any other superstar you want to name. But sometimes we forget about other players that have massive roles on their team. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the most underrated players in the NBA. Let's get right into it. So let me just explain to you how this is going to work so nobody roasts me in the comment section for leaving their favorite underrated player out. I am going to give a starting lineup of players who I think are very underrated. Now, all of these players are starters. I know there are tons of bench players who also play a big part on their team, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to have one starting point guard, one shooting guard, one small forward, one power forward, and one center that I think are underrated. So now that I have that cleared up, let's move on to the point guard position. At the point guard position, I have Dennis Schroeder. So far this season, he's averaging 20 points per game, 3 rebounds per game, 6.7 assists per game, and he's doing this on the Atlanta Hawks. Now, this is the reason that I think he is underrated, because as you probably know if you watch the NBA, the Atlanta Hawks are absolutely terrible. And I think that the only reason Dennis Schroeder didn't get All-Star consideration this year is because of how bad his team is performing, because his numbers are definitely at an all-star level, and he's a very young player. Some people were calling him over last offseason the most valuable trade piece because of his skill, because of his age, and because of his cheap contract. And I think that as the Atlanta Hawks build up young talent and Dennis Schroeder leads their team as the point guard, I think they are definitely a team to look out for. Moving on to the shooting guard position, we have Tim Hardaway Jr. So far this season, he's averaging 18.4 points per game, 4.2 rebounds per game, and 3 assists per game. In my opinion, this dude is just a stud on the offensive end. He's a great offensive guard. His defense is okay, but in my opinion, he's more used on the offensive end, and he's a great support player for Kristaps Porzingis. Many people this offseason were saying that the Knicks were stupid for paying him a ton of money, and in my opinion, it wasn't even that much money. People were freaking out over nothing. Some people were calling it the worst contract. I think it was either $16 million a year or $18 million a year, but for a guy producing 18.4 points per game, 4.2 rebounds per game, and 3 assists per game, I think that this is a pretty fair contract, and I'm excited to see what he can do with Porzingis and the Knicks roster in the future. Next up, we have Khris Middleton. In my opinion, he looks a lot like a GOAT. Nah, but for real though, on a more serious note, Khris Middleton is one of, if not the most underrated starter in the league, in my opinion. So far this season, he's averaging 20 points per game, 5.2 rebounds per game, and 4.3 assists per game, and he's shooting at a very efficient 46%. And if you're telling me that those are not all-star level numbers, then you are tripping, because those are definitely all-star level numbers. And the only reason Khris Middleton doesn't get the recognition that he deserves, in my opinion, is because he plays beside Giannis, the Greek freak, Antetokounmpo, which makes sense, but Khris Middleton is an absolutely elite 3-and-D player. He's one of the best, if not the best. Him and Klay Thompson are probably the best 3-and-D players in the league, and I think that Khris Middleton could probably be the star of a lot of teams if he didn't play besides Giannis. Now, moving on to the power forward position, we have Tobias Harris. And I've been watching Tobias Harris for a long time, ever since he played for the Magic, and he's always been one of my favorite players, at least one of my favorite role players in the league. On the season, he's averaging 18 points per game, 5.2 rebounds per game, and 2 assists per game. And if you're up to date on NBA news, you will know that he recently got traded to the LA Clippers, and on his new roster, I think that he will be the primary scoring option, maybe besides Danilo Gallinari, but in my opinion, he should be the primary scoring option on the Clippers because they kind of have nobody on the roster. But he is a do-it-all player. He plays solid defense, and he's very good on the offensive end as well. He can play the small forward and the power forward. Usually he plays the power forward, and he's kind of undersized for that position, but he still does it very well, and he's one of the best role players in the league. Finally, to cap off this video, at the center position, we have Steven Adams. And he's probably my favorite player on this list just because of all the things that he does for the Oklahoma City Thunder. On the season, he's averaging 14 points per game, 8.8 rebounds per game, and 1 assist per game. He's a great defensive center, he's a great pick and roll center, and he's a great rebounder as well. In my opinion, he'd be averaging 4 to 5 more rebounds per game if he didn't play with Russ, because as you know, Russ is a triple-double threat on any given night, but most of Russ's rebounds come from Steven Adams boxing out. So if Steven Adams got the rebound every single time he boxed out, he'd have a ton more rebounds, but Russ takes a lot of those away from him. Like I said before, he's a great pick-and-roll center, and most of Russ's assists actually go to Steven Adams. So without Steven Adams, the Thunder would honestly be in such a different situation. Another thing to look at is that Steven Adams is only 23 years old. That is crazy ridiculous. He's only been in the league for 3 or 4 seasons, I believe, and he's already contributing this much to a championship contender, if you want to consider Oklahoma a championship contender. But anyways, please leave your thoughts on my lineup and the players that I put in it in the comment section down below. Please tell me if you agreed with my picks, and if you didn't, who would you have put in this lineup? Also remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks.